Hello, and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Monday the 19th of August. And joining me in this edition, Steve Withers.
Yeah, but Mr. Brown, that's a little too close to Mr. Shit.
Kaz Harlow.
You shoot me in a dream, you better wake up and apologise.
And Ed Selley.
You shoot this man, you die next.
Welcome back to the podcast before we take our second summer holiday. Yes, we are feeling a bit flush, so we're taking a second summer holiday this year. So the podcast is away. Obviously, it's bank holiday weekend next weekend, so we're not recording then. And then I am away for a week's holiday up to the Western Highlands of Scotland, near Eilean Castle, the one
So
from
we'll be eaten
Highlander.
alive by small insects.
It should be okay this time of the year. They're now all starting to die off, sort of end of August, beginning of September. We normally go October, but we're going a little bit earlier this year. So we're on holiday, and the podcast returns on the 9th of September, which means we need to do our best-ofs at some point, and I think middle of the month is just a bit too early for us to do our best-ofs. There's still another 2 or 3 weeks left of this month, so at least 2 weeks of this month left. So we're going to do that when we return on the 9th of September. We also recorded just Sunday past, and this is now Friday morning that we're recording, so we haven't really done that much, I wouldn't have imagined. I mean, I've been to the cinema twice, and I've done a fair bit of moving TVs around and packaging and that kind of thing and reviewing. Steve?
Same.
Right.
So I've been to the cinema 3 times.
Ooh, you got a one-up everybody, have you?
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's been 4 work days since I last spoke to you. So
Yeah.
take a wild guess.
Yeah, not a lot happening. Ed, your life seems to be running at 100 miles an hour at the minute.
It is. I drove all the way to near Manchester and back yesterday. Whose idea was it to put 50-mile-an-hour speed limits on all the roads in the Peak District? That's just cruel. Can I just say that is really, really unfair?
This weekend we've got a big Mustang thing on this weekend, so I've been doing all the prep for it because it's a run from County Durham up to Scotland and then back again along Hadrian's Wall. And I was up doing a recce last month of the route that we're going to do, and it's an old road that I've known for most of my life, and I start tear-arsing it along, and then I'm thinking, that's a 50 sign, oh, hang on, and it completely ruined the road for me, because I was ready to enjoy that bit of road. I hadn't driven it in a number of years, and it's now all 50 zone. I just think, why? There was nothing else on the road.
Yeah. I mean, I will say that clearly I don't think it's enforced that hard, as I was there in my not slow car. I was overtaken by a Transit Connect by someone who obviously lives locally doing about 700
but you know that
miles
a Transit Connect is the fastest thing on the road, especially if it's white.
This is true. This one wasn't, but nonetheless, that person clearly knew what the risks entailed in doing that were. So best of luck to them. I hope they had a lovely time. But no, that was fine. I've got my first house viewing on Monday. So if we time this right, I will start being unavailable as I'm in the midst of moving hell at about the time that Botwright's completed his. So we can just seamlessly segue from one to t'other. It'll be fine. I don't know if anyone saw Mark's Instagram. He doesn't make much of a play of it, but did anyone see that magnificent leaning shed he's taken delivery of in his new house? He put some photos of some of the decor in the house he's just bought, which is going to require some work. I wish him the best of luck with that. But the shed is no word of a lie, about 25 degrees out from the vertical. It's just sort of canted over to one side, and the previous owners went, well, it hasn't fallen down yet. It's just still full of stuff, which is lovely, and it's most impressive. So yeah, that was all quite good. But yeah, so no, it's been nice and busy here. Lots of work on. I've got a house full of stuff. Some things for AVForums, some things for other people, and it's just started to rain. So what more could a man ask for?
Yeah, I'm just looking at that shed.
It's marvellous, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a bit of an angle, isn't it? Right, so we only need to catch up with Kaz. Kaz wasn't around on Sunday, so Kaz has got lots of things to tell us about.
No, I'm still recovering from 3 hours of the police helicopter circling the house.
Stop committing
crimes.
Yeah. I was lifting these concrete slabs, possibly the heaviest things I've ever lifted, and we got some builders
They tend
in.
to be quite heavy.
And they refused to lift them because they were too heavy. So they just left them there. So I wanted to do something with it. So I tried to make some steps out of them, and I got 90% done. I think I was on the penultimate one. And when I put it down on my finger, and it caught the bit that sticks out beyond the end of your fingernail and just basically squished it.
Lovely.
So, which was a kind of an interesting place to squish a finger.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I hope you're not looking for sympathy. You don't get any on here.
No, there's no sympathy.
No, I don't. I didn't think that's. I'm just saying that the excitement is lifting concrete slabs.
Okay, good stuff.
That's
So,
where we're at.
as you can see, rock and roll lifestyles of everybody here. Right, so we're up to date. Competitions, Kaz, tell us all about them.
Okay, current competitions. Bowers and Wilkins formation wedge worth $8.99 and 99 pence. That's open till 24th of August. £100 to spend with MPB, the platform for trading camera gear online, 10th September. Copies of Criterion's August titles on Blu-ray. That's Kiss Me Deadly, Clute, and Do the Right Thing. That closes end of the month.
Any of those?
All of them. Reviews are going up slowly. I think that Kiss Me Deadly was great. I'd never seen it before. I'd seen Clute before. It's very good. It's not as edgy as obviously it would have been back in the day. And I thought Do the Right Thing was a little bit incendiary, actually, and not necessarily in a good way. I like.
You've seen it before, haven't you?
I've never seen Do the Right Thing before.
It's meant to be incendiary.
Yeah, but maybe I'm not sure. I haven't written the review, but I haven't quite settled on whether or not I think he was saying that violence is appropriate as a response to.
Doesn't he start with a quote about peace and a quote about violence at the end?
He does.
Hedges his bets.
Yeah, so he does exactly that. But I'm not sure, and I'm also not sure. He starts with a quote about peace and a quote about eye for an eye, and I'm not really sure that I saw that from the end. So I thought it was quite a controversial ending, to say the least. But yeah, they're all good. Batman Hush, which is a pretty good interpretation of Hush.
I love the way that Hush was the loudest word you said so far. Is that cruelly ironic?
Yeah, maybe. 26th of August. I've only had one coffee this morning. Wild Rose on DVD, 27th of August. Denon AVR X2600H AV receiver worth $5.99. That closes 24th of September. And I hear Ed whispering that that's a nice prize.
It is.
It is.
It's a cracking prize. We'll always have high quality prizes on the AVForums.
Yeah.
Yeah. All competitions open to eligible AVForums members resident in the UK. And previous competition winners, none.
Some cracking competition prizes in there, especially the Denon AVR. That is a really good prize, like say 600 quid's worth. Right, so that's the competitions done, and we're on to hardware reviews next. Right, moving on to hardware reviews. Ed, you've been reviewing some hi-fi.
Yes, although I've been reviewing hi-fi with a view to it being holiday season. So we, as an organisation, not Royal We, were contacted by Samsung in their new role as the overseers of the AKG brand, because obviously Samsung now owns Harman International. A lot of it's been left to its own devices, or it's become Harman Luxury Audio, so on and so forth. But AKG has been taken on by Samsung. And is obviously going to be focused on doing things that Samsung needs. So we've had a look at the Y500, which is an over-ear Bluetooth and wired headphone. You have the option of both of those things. And it is yours for a very reasonable, I need to get this absolutely right, I believe it is £129. Let's just bring that up. It is indeed £129. Hooray, go me. Now, if you are looking for a pair of headphones that may go on holiday with you right away, and then also in the full once you've come back from your holiday and you've properly depressed, you start commuting with them as well. Really good piece of kit here. AKG have got so much experience in this area, and it really, really shows. This is another example of a headphone where there's the noise cancelling is much less notionally sophisticated than some of the more expensive models that we've tested, and so is the Bluetooth implementation. There is no aptX, there is no aptX HD, and do you know what? On a pair of £130 headphones, listening to Spotify or Deezer or the sort of thing that the vast majority of people are going to be listening to, it doesn't make any significant difference at all. SBC is absolutely fine for this. In the interest of not reading the entire review to you, I don't want to say too much more than that, other than to say this is another demonstration that the specs are not necessarily everything in all of these things. You can pay the same amount of money for something which notionally boasts more impressive figures and facilities, but the chances are it won't be anything like as comfortable to wear, easy to use, or as satisfying to live with. And that's the sort of overview of the review. It will be going up in the not too distant future. And as I say, if you're looking for something that's going to possibly help you keep your lovely family at arm's length sonically whilst you go on holiday, and then do the same thing for commuting, you could do an awful lot worse than look at a pair of these.
Okay, good stuff. So when you look at a lot of headphones, Ed,
I do. Yes.
Where do these rank in the grand scheme of things, sound quality wise? If you are solely looking for something to use at home, they are nowhere near, even under wired conditions. There's just too much extra stuff in them. If you're looking for home headphones at that price, Audio-Technica and Grado, they really do have that part of the market. I mean, Audio-Technica do comfortable and not quite as good a sounding thing. Grado don't understand what comfort is. I would argue they actively go out of their way to ignore it, but they sound phenomenal. These are clearly designed with a view to being used on the move. And the noise cancelling, hang on a second, it has a specific name. They're very clear on this because it's not, their argument is it's not designed to just draw out it's called ambient aware. So the best way to think of it is that the noise cancelling on this headphone is present all the time, which means for home use, it's at an instant disadvantage. But it's so artfully worked into the overall presentation that if you go outside, if you go for a walk, and please do not walk alongside traffic when wearing noise cancelling headphones, let me just state that. If you go out for a walk, you'll think, well, it's not doing that, I can still hear, and then you turn it off and you realise just how much you actually turn the ambient aware on rather, and it does a noise pass through. You realise just how much information it's getting shot of, and for use on a train of a morning or things like that, it's just going to work really, really well. And it manages to do that without being huge, because most noise cancelling headphones that we look at perfectly logically try and encompass the whole head. These, I'm assuming via means of witchcraft, sit on the ear and still manage to do the same thing. And that's not to be sniffed at, because it makes for an altogether smaller and more subtle pair of headphones. I mean, obviously, it's a reflection as much of anything that people are much more used to seeing people out and about wearing headphones these days. But I got no second looks at all doing my standard trip to a supermarket wearing a pair of headphones, which historically I used to do with absolutely every pair of headphones I've reviewed. But some of the headphones when you're setting off with a sort of £3,000 pair of headphones on your head, it makes you A, look like a complete bell end, and B, has sort of security issues. So I've stopped doing that now for some of the true home headphones, but for those, they were absolutely ideal for the task. It's a case of choosing the headphone for the role that you need at the time. And if you are looking for something which you're going to be using out and about with you, they are a very, very impressive proposition. The only competition is an extra £60, AKG's M50 XBT. That's a better headphone, and it's Bluetooth 5, so it has truly extraordinary battery life, but it is an extra £60. And when we're dealing with a price in total of £130, that's a meaningful difference. So they don't necessarily exist in the same class. Okay, good stuff. Thanks very much for that, Ed. And the review will be up while we're away. Well, the podcast is away. Right, so very quickly, I'm going to do two very quick products. One at either end of the price scale, same technology, so LED LCD TVs. I've been looking at the Sharp LC60 UI7652E. Really nice and snappy name there. This is it was a £699 TV. I believe it can now be picked up for around about £499, so £500 for a 60-inch TV. It has Motion 400 is their video processing. It's got Smart TV Aquis on board, which basically gives you Netflix and BBC iPlayer and a very small app store that doesn't have Amazon, unfortunately. It has most of the features you would imagine a TV at this price point to have, including HDR, although HDR, the peak brightness measurement was 250 nits, so that gives you an idea of the performance with HDR. It's not really an HDR TV. It has DTS surround on board. The sound system is by Harman Kardon, 3 HDMI inputs and an SD card reader. That's kind of everything it has, to be honest. It doesn't have a wide colour gamut. It's one of these TVs that it's built to a price point, and it's quite restricted in its smart TV system. It's the Aquis Net Plus, and like I say, you get Deezer, YouTube, BBC iPlayer, Netflix there. Although Netflix is 4K. And that's about it, really, in terms of features. In terms of performance, it's a direct backlit TV, but without local dimming. So the LEDs are behind the set, but there is no local dimming there. As such, like I say, it's 250 nits peak brightness. It's about 2,200 to 1 in terms of which is a little bit down for an LED LCD TV. But then again, it's £499 for a 60-inch TV.
I mean, yeah. Can we just go back to that? Even though it doesn't take too many years ago where we would have devoted the better part of a podcast to asking how on earth that had been done. Yeah, it's amazing how quickly we normalise these things, isn't it?
Yeah, and it obviously comes to the scale of production and all the rest of it. Panels, they get bigger, they get cheaper the more they make as well. This is a Sharp panel. It's a VA panel. Unfortunately, I did find that the black levels were not great, and it did have some uniformity issues. Now, that's if you're watching in a pitch black room. I had it next to the Panasonic GX800, which is an edge lit TV, and it's only £200 more expensive with edge lighting. And I thought, well, direct backlight's probably going to perform better than an edge backlight, but actually the Panasonic wiped the floor with the Sharp, to be honest, because the Panasonic has a local dimming system, and even though it's an edge lit set. And as soon as you switch the local dimming on the Panasonic, the panel cleaned up quite a bit, so it wasn't as obvious that there was bright corners and so on. Whereas the Sharp is very, very patchy, lots of DSE in there. So if you're watching football on it, there is quite a bit of DSE in there. In terms of colours, it was quite muted in terms of colours. It is a 4K TV. It accepted 4K UHD Blu-rays. It played back HDR10. The tone mapping wasn't nothing to shout home about. It's a TV built to a price point, the Sharp, and you could tell. Whereas the Panasonic was built to a price point, but because of reductions in prices, it happens when Panasonics hit the store. They're full price for a few weeks, and then they start to drop in price. And I think it's found its ceiling, the GX800, at about $899, and it's just a far superior TV at that price point. They've taken some time with it. I'm saying it's a far superior TV, but the Panasonic's got quite a few issues as well. It comes down to the LED LCD TV technology. So that's built to a price point. If it's something you're looking for, gaming wise, it's 28 milliseconds lag, which wasn't too bad actually. It would be a nice TV for the bedroom, to be honest, and 60 inches, nice big TV for the bedroom. Or I was going to say the kitchen, but I only know of one person through Steve that has huge, gigantic TVs in his kitchen.
To be fair, the houses I've been looking at to buy, I don't think a 60-inch TV is going in any of those bedrooms. Let's be clear about that. Or at least not without significant ability to actually then do a bed. So yeah, we'll see how it goes.
One thing that did surprise me about this TV, though, they said 79% of something or other when it came to colour gamut. When I actually did the P3 tracking, from 75% stimulus downwards, it was fairly accurate. They were almost hitting the points, but the problem was that 100% was right next to 75%, Steve, on the chart. So it was a really restricted gamut, but it looks like they got the luminance and the saturation tracking okay, so from about 75% downwards. So when you're watching a UHD, it was able to hit the points. It's just there wasn't a hell of a lot of luminance behind the colours, so colour brightness wasn't what you would expect from an LCD TV. So it did look a little bit washed out. The whole image looked a little bit washed out. So I'm not sure why it did that. It seemed a little bit strange, but. And just to wrap up, of course, we keep coming back to this, and I'm surprised that we're one of the only review sites that still does this, but checking out of the box presets, which the vast majority of people are going to use when they buy a TV like this. If you put it into movie mode, it's actually not too bad up till about 60% stimulus or 60% luminance. In the grayscale, it's under 3, and then it gradually goes over 3 when you get to 70 to 100. But the gamma tracked pretty well, which is unusual for a TV this price point, because what you normally find is that the video processor on board and the settings that they give you to play with are quite restricted. But actually, Sharp had given quite a bit of leeway there. It was only a 1 point grayscale correction, but then it only really needed a 1 point correction to get it under 3 once it was calibrated. So yeah, in that respect, not too bad out of the box. It was a little bit blue in the most accurate movie mode, but then it wasn't as blue as the brighter presets, which as you go into vivid mode and so on, it's just full of blue in there to get the brightness and so on. So it was fairly accurate out of the box. It just the image quality just wasn't what I was expecting from Sharp. It's obviously built to a price point, and I'm sure at that price point people will be very happy with that, because they're not going to be looking at getting their TV calibrated or anything else, and they're probably not going to use it in the movie mode. So whatever assessment I'm giving it here, it's probably not going to be applicable to the vast majority of buyers of this type of TV. But I thought it'd be interesting to look at a TV at that price point. So going from that end of the market to another end of the market, we're going to add £1,100 onto the price tag, and we're going to look at the Q85R from Samsung. And I've got to say, this TV really surprised me. The Q90 is a cracking TV, really good TV. The 85 is almost as good, and it does it with less dimming zones, which seems to be counterintuitive. And the 55 that I'm reviewing actually has more dimming zones than the 65 on the Q8500. So it had just around 100 zones, whereas the 65 has 96 zones. There's a slight difference in the makeup of the panels between the 55 and the 65. I've got to say, black level wise, I just came from watching having the Panasonic GX or GZ 1500 on the stand and putting the 85 up there. I've got to say, the black levels are really, really good. The local dimming algorithm that Samsung uses is really good, especially when you're watching normal TV in a normally lit room with normal ambient lighting and so on. It looks fantastic. Once you get the lights off, that's where you start to see one or two issues with the LCD technology, mainly black crush. There's not that you can do about that because of the way the algorithm works, the local dimming algorithm. I know that Samsung are continually working on this to try and get it so it improves, and it has improved year on year. The Q90 was an improvement on the Q9FN before it in terms of how the local dimming algorithm worked. So I know that they are absolutely working on it. Color wise, looked excellent. It was fairly accurate out of the box. Dead on accurate once calibrated. HDR performance, 1000 nits peak brightness, and it was consistent at that. It always measured that. It didn't measure any more or any less. What I mean by that is that sometimes you can take a few measurements, and Steve will back me up on this, and you will get fluctuations. Whether if you say you've had an 80% pattern up for I'd say a minute, and then you switch to measuring 100, it will measure down. Because you've had the panel lit up at that point. If you're going from black to white, then sometimes you get a different result. Am I right in that, Steve?
Yeah, true. Yeah.
So depending on what you've had on screen before you go to 100% white, at 10% will affect, on most TVs, it didn't affect the Samsung. It was consistent. It had a nice use of the backlight. I didn't see the local dimming getting in the way, so I didn't see brightness fluctuations or anything. Fade to blacks, it did tend to fade to black too quickly. and on one or two trailers that I run deliberately on local dimming TVs just to see how the local dimming works. It was a little bit lazy coming out of black as well. So whereas the OLED was, you were starting to see lower reaches of the black coming through, it took the Samsung a little bit of time to realise it was something on screen that it should be shown, which has been an issue with Samsung screens and LEDs with local dimming. And again, it's something that they're continually working on. So these things improve. Every time I see one, I think, wow, this is getting better. And I've got to say, this year, the black levels, I don't know if you'll back me up on this, Steve, or not, with your experience, but the black levels and the overall image dynamics on the Samsung TVs this year, the higher end QLEDs, have been really, really strong. And it's a big step on. I mean, I went from this Sharp to the Samsung. Yes, it's £1,100 difference in price, but it's also a huge jump in performance. And if
I think when it comes to LCD, the only company that's still really heavily investing in R&D in that technology is Samsung. So when you compare their LCD TVs to anybody else's, it's a quantum leap in performance, because they're the ones that are really still pushing it, whereas everybody else, they'll buy in panels, they'll do an LCD television, but they're mostly aimed at the mid to lower part of the price bracket, and their kind of higher end stuff tends to be OLED. So if you're looking for a quality LCD television, you should really be looking at Samsung.
It is amazing what absolute obstinacy can do.
Absolutely. I'll tell you what, though, they have really pushed it, and
they've taken it to levels I didn't think were possible.
No, and obviously they backed themselves into a corner with the whole OLED thing, and they had to do something, and they've delivered. Really, with the LCD TV, they have delivered a performance that gets pretty close to what an OLED TV does, and I mean that in a general sense, because each technology has its strengths and its weaknesses and so on. So I'm not saying that it's better than an OLED for black levels. That it can't possibly be that. You're going to have blooming, you're going to have zones and all the rest of it. It can't do per pixel, but in terms of color accuracy, it's definitely there. And it's definitely I would say, on a par with some of the best OLEDs there. It struggles to match the Panasonic in pureness of colour, but, it gets close to the competition out there. And video processing.
Obviously on very bright images and full field bright images.
Yeah.
It's
although this one's only 1,000, I'm saying it's 1,000 peak, but again, everybody's using dynamic tone mapping this year. So even though you're measuring something on a 10% window or even a 5% window, and usually you'll get a more realistic measurement on a 5% window of what specular highlights would be on screen at some time. Measuring a rectangle and then actually watching content that is being dynamically tone mapped to the capabilities of the TV are two different things, really different things. And I think people need to realise this when they're reading reviews, not only ours but other reviews, that the peak brightness figure is just one figure. It doesn't mean anything really, because as soon as you go to an HDR, whether it's HDR 10 plus or Vision, they're all using some form of dynamic tone mapping or dynamic metadata, and that's completely different to what you're measuring. And again, hopefully Steve will back me up on this, but it's useful taking a peak brightness measurement, but it's not the be all and end all. And people should really stop thinking it's a be all. Oh, I'm not going to buy that TV. It only had 415 nits. Yeah, that's one tiny little thing. What was the actual performance like? Actually sit down and watch something. And I've been looking at...
Sorry, Phil, just from a perspective of trying to get a relative, is this the equivalent to if you've got an amplifier with a headline, not PMPO, but a sustained maximum power output of 150 watts, but actually when you look at current delivery, so on and so forth, it's actually still going to struggle more than an 80 watt amplifier with twice the available power supply capacity.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
It's stuff like that. It's it's a headline figure. It's a measurement that you can make that tells you a little bit about the performance, but it doesn't tell you actually anything about the performance. The main thing is how the TV tone maps, and I forget who used the analogy because I thought it was a brilliant analogy. But it's like getting 2 litres of milk into a 1 litre carton.
It was me.
Was it you? Was it?
Yeah.
And who did you steal it from?
No, it was my idea.
Oh, I don't know about that now.
Copyright.
But anyway, whoever said it is absolutely right. It's like getting 2 litres of milk into a 1 litre carton. You've got to get the specular highlights in there, you've got to get the black level in there, and you've got to squeeze it all into the capabilities of the TV. So the tone mapping is absolutely important. Forget your peak brightness figures, because your peak brightness figures only account for probably about 4% of the performance level of the TV when it comes to specular highlights. If a TV can tone map properly and use all of its capabilities, that's a bigger attribute that you should be looking at when it comes to assessing a TV. And actually go and watch stuff on a TV. Don't just look at specs. One thing I find really quite sad these days is reading some threads on the forums, and people are very, very quick to dismiss something because of the specs that they read related to that product. I know it's difficult to go and see products nowadays and go and demo, but it shouldn't be for TVs. Every TV showroom should have 5 or 6 different brands of TV, and a John Lewis will definitely have the higher end TVs for you to go and actually look at yourself. And you should do that. Absolutely go and look at that. And don't take specs and slight measurements and all that, because I think people are doing themselves a disservice by doing that. They're cutting their nose off to spite their face, and that's a shame, because a lot of these TVs, I mean, the vast majority of these TVs, when it comes to reviewing them at the minute, you're talking about minute differences when it comes to the higher end TVs, and how one TV does one thing slightly better than another, and you are really splitting hairs, especially when it comes to the OLED TVs. When you line them all up and calibrate them, I doubt you'd see much of a difference. They're very, very subtle differences, and this is the problem. Sometimes people read reviews, and these subtle differences then become really big items, and they don't need to be. So if you can, I would go and demo stuff. Always use a review as a guide. Don't use it as an outright, and specs as well. Use it as a guide, but don't base your buying decisions on the specs. It's only a 10-bit panel, or it's only HDMI 2.0B or whatever. I just find it sad reading that, and reading people being so dismissive of stuff quickly. I don't know about you, Steve, but really,
do you know what? I'd go one stage further. I mean, obviously my reviews aren't, every now and again I can check a few very basic measurement things here, but they're not a structural part of the reviews. In terms the stuff that is most important, and I have to say I place significant impetus on this, things that you can find from my reviews that I suspect are harder to find out under demo. If I have found that there are issues with control apps, or the remote is a bucket of bollocks, or things like that, that's actually stuff that can be harder to find out in a demo environment. My comments on sound quality are based upon a reasonable level of experience, and everything gets tested in the same way, but there's huge subjectivity in that. I think it's more a case of flagging up when I just don't think that, when there are certain control aspects of things that I just don't think work very well. I mean, the classic case in point, don't want to pick anyone out, but I suppose the most recent example of things that using DTS Play-Fi, I just can't really get on with that interface. I don't believe it's terribly good. Sonically, I can't necessarily fault it, but I would imagine living with a product that uses that, you may find that to be quite a frustrating experience. And I think that's often where the actual bonus of the reviews comes in.
Audio-wise, absolutely subjectivity comes to play quite a bit. There's a little bit of subjectivity in the TV reviews, what the design's like and all the rest of it. When it comes to picture quality, the vast majority of the measurements you're making are objective, and you're basing your outcome on objective data, and a bit of subjective as well. There has to be a bit of subjective in there. You can't be 100% objective. But what I was trying to say is, there seems to be, not just on our forums, but certainly YouTube comments and all that kind of thing. The more I read, the more I find it disheartening that people are writing products off really, really quickly. Oh, it's going to get burning and that kind of thing. Sometimes it's just taking it a little bit too far, and it's putting people off products that are actually absolutely cracking value for money, extremely good performance. I mean, for where we are now to even 5 years ago, it's the level of accuracy and so on that you get in the black levels and picture detail. I don't understand it. Do you, Steve?
No. I mean, even from a relatively inexpensive television, you're getting levels of accuracy and performance that you would only dreamt about 5, 10 years ago. Would have been impossible to even think of it. And people still moan, isn't it? It's like you don't know how lucky you are. That's how I feel like saying sometimes.
Yeah, but for me, it's
don't know where you were born.
But for me, it's it's reading the specs and it's saying, oh well, this one only gets 479.
Well, yeah.
There's more to it than
reading
that.
Everyone ticks boxes when they're looking at products because you've got an idea of what you're looking for, and you think, well, I want this feature and I want this feature, but like you say, any review, any experience, any audio or video experience is ultimately subjective because we all see and hear slightly differently from everybody else.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's tolerance bands, in terms of normal human hearing and vision, but our perception of the world is unique to us, and therefore, you should always. I mean, we always say this, but before you buy money, particularly if it's an expensive product, we'd always recommend demoing it, spending some time with it, getting a look at it, and the same goes for even a mid-range TV. Before you write it off, go and have a look at it. And I mean, most stores will have them on display. People like John Lewis, so go in, check it out, or Richard Sounds, check it out, see what you think. Take something with you that you're familiar with. And see how that looks, because tone mapping is, it's a very different ball game from the old days when it was just, you had to hit 100 hits and deliver Rec 709, and if you could do that, your TV was going to deliver what the content was encoded at. Now you're talking about, as you said, taking 2 litres and trying to put it into 1 litre. So there's a degree of skill and art to that. And some people can be better at it than others. And despite the peak brightness, if you're doing the tone mapping really well, the experience can be just as good, if not better, than TVs with crap tone mapping. So, yeah, don't just look at specs. Always look at the bigger picture. Literally.
Literally. So two ends of the spectrum there, the Sharp and the Samsung, and there's a huge gulf there. Even though it is £1,100 difference, the gulf is pretty massive as well. You find that a lot of the TVs under £1,000, they are built to that price point. And that's not to say that the performance is bad. For the majority of people, the performance would be fine. I think from an AVForums member point of view, who's a little bit more clued in for image quality and so on, you're looking at the higher end of the £1,000 range before you start to get the features you really need. And that what I mean by that is like Dolby Vision and HDR10 Plus and so on, starting to come into the market round about the £700-800 mark, and that's where those technologies make a big difference and add value. Because the Panasonic, it wasn't particularly great with HDR10 Plus, but when using dynamic metadata, Dolby Vision, there was a difference. You could see that there was a difference in terms of the.
Are you saying it performed better with Dolby Vision than it did with HDR10 Plus?
No. It was better with HDR10.
Oh, sorry, you said HDR10 Plus.
No, the dynamic metadata against static metadata. The static was fine, but it was blowing the highlights, whereas with Dolby Vision, playing similar material, looking in the highlights, the detail was there. It was retaining the detail in the highlights, whereas it wasn't with the static metadata. So it's stuff like that makes a difference. And at that price point, it really does start to make a difference, because it's conforming the content that you're watching to the capabilities of the TV, and it makes a big difference. So anyway, I've taken up enough time TV-wise. Steve, you've been reviewing another soundbar.
I have. Yay! It's interesting. I think I can draw an analogy here that Ed will relate to, which is that soundbars as a market has exploded over the last 5 to 10 years. It's gone from being a fairly niche product to being a very popular product. And in many cases, an essential product if you're trying to boost up the performance of your TV sound, because as TVs have got thinner and thinner, so the performance generally in terms of audio, there are exceptions, but generally the audio performance has got worse and worse because they're trying to cram speakers into very slim chassis. And so conversely, the soundbar market has grown exponentially because you can boost the sound quality of your TV with a relatively inexpensive and relatively unobtrusive product, and you can put it at the front under the TV and hide it away, and generally it doesn't take up too much room and it doesn't ruin the look of the lounge, and you get better sound. So great. What I'm seeing now is I've been reviewing over the last year or so quite a few different soundbars from different manufacturers. There's a sort of a group of soundbar manufacturers that you kind of associate with. It's a Yamaha, it's a name I'd immediately associate with soundbars. Samsung have been doing a lot of soundbars, particularly now that they've bought Harman Kardon and things like that. They've been really beefing that up. LG have been doing a lot of soundbars in conjunction with Meridian, and I've seen Panasonic, for example, had soundbars. But what I'm starting to see is a move into the market by higher end brands. And I should imagine for Ed, it's similar with headphones. The headphone market explodes, and you start seeing manufacturers who either more associated more with higher end products or with other products and not headphones, moving into a marketplace space that they feel has potential and room for growth and some
this
profit.
is a discussion for another time. Actually, we've seen that, and now we're now to the point that the people who actually made it work are still there, and a lot of other people have buggered off who couldn't make it work. So you've got all this to look forward to. You can start spreading your bets as to who can make it stick and who can't.
So last week I was talking about Sennheiser with the Ambio soundbar, very much the opposite of what I just described in terms of what I think was the initial appeal of a soundbar, which was to boost the sound of a TV without taking up too much space in your lounge. The Ambio is enormous and incredibly heavy, and is not something you can hide. You have to buy it. If you buy it, you're buying it because you want people to see that soundbar. Sounds great, but at 2,000 quid, it's not cheap either. So I mean, when you think about it, that's more than most TVs cost. So there's a definite sort of thought process that goes into buying a product like that when you think, well, I'm prepared to pay A, that much money, and B, for something that big, when you could alternatively go a different route, like an AVR and speaker package. The product I'm reviewing at the moment, the Klipsch BAR 48, is another good example. Klipsch, obviously a well-known speaker manufacturer, moving into the soundbar market. So being a Klipsch, obviously, what are they famous for? They're famous for their horns, and this has got horns on it. Now,
nice.
Unlike the speakers that I reviewed, the reference package I reviewed not so long ago, you can't cover the horns with grills on the soundbar. They are loud and proud. So if you don't like horns, you ain't going to like this soundbar, because it's basically just a black rectangular bar. It's not reinventing the wheel in terms of design, with a cloth grill on the majority of it, which is where the front firing the drivers are. And then right at the very end, each end, there is a tweeter, a horn tweeter. So if you got to dig the look of a Klipsch if you're going to buy this soundbar. In terms of its build quality, I'll admit that coming off the back of the Ambio, anything else is going to seem shoddy, because that thing is built like a tank. But I've got to say, the build quality is okay. It's fairly light. It's not. I wouldn't say it's particularly. It's okay. It's nothing special in terms of build quality. It comes with a wireless subwoofer. Again, it's a wooden box with a downward firing driver. It's nothing particularly. There's nothing about this product that it doesn't scream. Innovation. Okay, it's taking what Klipsch knows and it's doing it in a soundbar, and so it's very basic in terms of its design. It is, like I said, it's literally just a rectangular black bar with horn tweeters at either end and a cloth grill along the middle, and a wooden black subwoofer. It's wireless. There is also a sub output on the back, so you can either run a second sub or you can swap out the wireless sub for a better subwoofer and just plug it in using an RCA cable. So that's a nice little feature. It's got one HDMI input rather. One HDMI input. Well, it's got one HDMI connection, that's a better way of putting it, with ARC. So you connect that to your TV. You can send audio back from the TV to the soundbar via ARC. So not a lot in terms of HDMI. It's got a 3.5mm analog input and an optical connection as well. So it's a pretty basic set of connections. It's a 2.1 system. So 2 channels at the front, firing forward, and the sub. And it's the right sort of size for a 55-inch TV in terms of its size. So yeah, it's fairly discreet in terms of its build, unlike the Ambio, for example. But like I say, those two horns are very much on display. Now, it supports Dolby Digital and DTS. It does not support any kind of immersive audio, of course, and since it's only got one HDMI connection, there's no worries about passing Vision or HDR10 Plus. That's all fine. It comes with a remote control. It's got wall brackets in there. There's a template for wall mounting it, some screw fixtures at the back. That's fairly easy. It's got Bluetooth built in. It's a pretty standard soundbar. So you tell me how much you think it costs.
I don't know. This is either going to be £8.50 or £899. It's hard to tell with Klipsch. I'm going to go with £500.
I was going to say that. I'll say £550.
Well, Phil, almost spot on. 565. Now,
how wonderfully arbitrary.
565 seems toppy for a 2.1 soundbar. Don't you think? I mean, does it sound good? It sounds good.
I was about to ask. It comes down if it offers groundbreaking.
I don't think it sounds good enough to pay £565 for it. It sounds, it sounds like what it is. It sounds like a 2-channel soundbar. I would think at 300 quid it would be good. 400 quid added push. 565. I mean, you can buy. Well, for example, I've just had in at the same time, just afterwards, the Panasonic HTB 900, which is a sub and a soundbar and sub combo, wireless sub. It's got 3 forward-firing channels. It does it supports Dolby Atmos and DTSX, but it does it psychoacoustically rather than with up-firing drivers. It's got 2 HDMI inputs. It passes. Actually, no, it's good. It bizarrely doesn't pass Dolby Vision or HDR10 Plus, which is a strange decision on the part of Panasonic, but I won't talk about that. But if you think about it, it does all this other stuff. It's got Chromecast built in, that kind of thing, and it's $599. So I think Klipsch are going to be competing they're going to be entering a very competitive part of the market where I think for 500-600 quid, people expect you to deliver quite a lot. I think they're very minimum. They're expecting it to deliver, immersive audio at that price point.
Yeah.
If you're talking 2-channel basic stuff, you're looking at, when you consider what you could get from the Polk for less than 200 quid, I think they've probably come in a bit toppy here on their pricing. It's a perfectly competent, nice sounding soundbar, but it doesn't do a lot.
There's
for
an element of damning with faint praise there. So yeah.
Yeah. So, but I mean, it's interesting.
I guess it's what it is.
Market.
It's a soundbar made by a speaker manufacturer, and they've come into it with what they know, which is the speaker part of it. And I don't think they really had anything else to bring to the party.
The whole reason I said 550 quid is Klipsch name, and the fact that it's horn and it's
those aren't cheap actually to do.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I mean, Klipsch manages to do it for less money than anybody else, but that still doesn't result in it being given away. So, you know.
You can see they're trying to set the bar as being a lifestyle brand, audio brand, and that's obviously what they're going for there with their pricing as well. They're trying to push themselves into a sector of the market. So, again, it's coming down to price, isn't it, Steve? And you can get far more for your money. If you look around, and obviously you've seen most of the sound bars out there, so what would you recommend?
What, at that price point, or generally?
Generally, round about that price point.
Well, I mean, I've always said, I mean, if you want the best immersive audio experience from a soundbar, then you need to get the Q90R from Samsung, because it's the one that comes with the wireless rear speakers with upward firing drivers built into them, so you genuinely get an immersive audio experience. Any of the other soundbars you buy, regardless of manufacturer, they are all going to be front heavy because there's nothing actually doing anything behind you. So you can widen it, you can bounce things off the sidewalls, and you can knock sounds all over the shop. But at the end of the day, it still sounds like everything's coming from the front of the room. Because
it's worth pointing out as well. If you like the idea of Klipsch presentation, and it must be said, it's a unique presentation, and for many people, it's appealing.
Very Marmite.
But if you want that, you can spend £165 less and go for the R41 powered monitor setup that I reviewed a couple of months ago. That only has an optical input, but in absolute performance terms, it's not going to make any significant difference on a non-immersive surround system. And that's excellent. And for music, I imagine it will knock 7 bells out of most of the bar-shaped competition. So Klipsch have actually made a bit of a rod for their own back there. That would be a far more suitable solution.
It is a solution that we do forget about. There are a lot of 2.0 and 2.1 solutions out there as well. Yeah. If you want a wider sound stage, you want to use it for music as well, and so on. There is that sector of the market. Maybe it's something we'll look at going forward and see what the options are. But anyway, we've run out of time for hardware. That's it for this week. Movie reviews are next. So, movie reviews, we're going to split them up this week. We're going to talk about 2 that we've seen in this section. And then at the end of the podcast, like we did a couple of weeks ago, we are going to talk about a film and talk about it in some detail and with spoilers. So we are assuming if you stay with us to the end of the podcast, you have seen the film and are interested in the conversation surrounding that film, and that's going to be Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the latest Quentin Tarantino film. We're going to talk about that at the end of the podcast. We're going to give you plenty of warning to leave us if you haven't seen it, but we're going to get quite in depth with that at the end of the podcast. right now we're going to talk about films we have seen without spoilers, although one's 40-year-old, so I think we're allowed a little bit of spoilers here and there, and one recent one that Steve managed to see as well. So Apocalypse Now, the final cut. I saw it in IMAX. I believe Steve saw it in IMAX as well.
I did.
It was on some Dolby cinemas as well. There's only 2 Dolby cinemas in the UK, so it did have a Dolby Cinema presentation as well, which I'm led to believe was quite good as well. So it would be 10 to 15 years since I last saw this, and I never saw Redux. Even though I've got it on disc, it's sitting in the cellophane. I never got around to watch it. It's an investment in time, which I'd forgotten about as well. And about halfway through, my bum was numb.
Well, you're glad you were watching Redux then, because that's even bloody longer.
Yeah, I know. And although I'm going in and I'm looking at because there's the screen as you go into the screen, and it tells you what time it starts and what time it finishes.
Yeah.
And according to the screen, it was 4 hours long, and I'm thinking, oh no, this can't be right. What I'd forgotten about was there was a Q&A thing, and I didn't stick around for the Q&A because after 3 and a bit hours, I was ready to go.
Well, I did, and I didn't get to bed till 2 a.m.
Did you? Well, more fool you. What I actually did was I went for a loo break during the credits, and I just didn't bother going back into the screen. I just thought, no, I'm going home. Because at that point,
it was the end.
Yeah, it was the end at that point. It's about 11:15. I just thought, no, I'm heading home now. What can I say? It's definitely had an HDR pass. I could tell that from the grade. It looked sumptuous. And seeing it on the big screen as well. And I noticed this with Jaws as well. Recently seen that on the big screen. And seeing them obviously done in 4K restorations and all sorts. You really see the limitations of the glass that was being used on the cameras back then, don't you?
There were some shitty lenses getting used back in the 70s,
there were, especially anamorphic lenses. Chromatic aberration everywhere, blurriness, out of focus. But it added an aesthetic, definitely, to this. There was a couple of shots that I thought ruined the overall presentation, and that was the shots in the end, in the dark, in the shadows, when he's doing his whole monologue thing.
In defence of Coppola, he had to do that.
Yes, he had no choice.
Because Brando turns up. He's supposed to turn up looking like a lean, fit Green Beret. He turns up massively fat.
Yeah.
And then Coppola said, "Okay, well, I'll shoot you. Like you've gone, excess. You've got naked women all over you and eating lots of food." But Brando was embarrassed about his weight, so wouldn't let him do that either. So the only solution he had was to
shoot him in the dark.
Yeah.
When you look at the footage of Brando at the end of Apocalypse Now, and look at the footage of him off, behind the scenes footage, they do a really good job of disguising just how fat he actually was.
Yeah.
But that's why he's in the shadow a lot of the time.
And the only complaint about that is that it's out of focus. And the backward and forward from him to Sheen is pristinely in focus, sharp and everything, and then it cuts back to Brando and he's out of focus. That was the only issue for me.
It's probably because he wasn't hitting his mark.
It's the only issue for me throughout the whole thing that kind of. Otherwise, the sound design and the remix is superb, absolutely superb, right from the start, right the way through. Phenomenal. The jungle sounds, the placement, the overhead effects. It really was. It was placing you right in the middle there, and the way it's been cleaned up and restored, it looked like it was filmed yesterday. Apart from the lenses that had been used, and obviously did cause a few issues with fringing at the sides and out of focus bits and pieces and so on, and strange depth of field effects. But again, that might have been deliberate. I don't know. It was much more noticeable on a 60-foot screen than it probably is. And like I say, I hadn't seen it for over a decade. So yeah, it looked spectacular for me.
Yeah, I think considering the conditions under which it was shot, it's a miracle it looks as good as it does. Because, they were in the jungle for 18 months. It's.
What's the infinite line we had? Too much money, too much equipment, and little by little we went insane.
Yeah, because this film isn't about Vietnam. This film is Vietnam. It's how America fought the war. We're in the jungle with too much money and too much equipment. Because if you haven't seen it and you get a chance, watch Hearts of Darkness, which is about the making of the film. It is one of the best making of documentaries ever made, and the madness in that film is, they were all off their tits on drugs, most of them. I mean, obviously, Sheen had a heart attack halfway through shooting.
That's commitment.
He recast the lead actor a week into filming. A hurricane blew away, a typhoon rather, blew away all the sets at one point. It was, the fact it got finished, he had to remortgage his own house.
Is it in the film? My favourite one is when they were all set to run the village attack, and Marcos then decided that he needed the helicopters to go and blow 7 shades of stuffing out of
up the mountains, didn't they?
So the helicopters all just turned round and sodded off.
Actually, also Coppola says in the Q&A afterwards with Steven Soderbergh, who was doing the questioning, he said the problem was that also we had the majority of the Philippine Army's helicopters in one place, so there was a danger we'd be attacked. So they kept moving them around in order for that not to happen. So yeah, when you think about it, you're thinking, bloody hell, it's a miracle this film got made, and it's a miracle it's as good as it is considering that. But what struck me watching it on the big screen, first of all, this is the final cut. So this is the third iteration of the film. For my money, he got it right with a theatrical cut. I know you like the French plantation sequence. I think it just drags. And also, as you pointed out last week, you can't understand a bloody word anyone's saying half the time.
So it's still not subtitled?
No. So it's a struggle to understand what's I get the point that they're making.
Achingly pretentious. But
I get the point that's being made in that sequence, but I felt it at that point in the film. It
slowed everything down.
Yeah, it stopped. It's just stopped the progress of the film up the river. I mean, they're literally going up a river, and they just stop for 20 minutes, and it's too long. So I would left that out. Also, they did cut out stuff from the Redux sequence. Like there was a sequence where they found the Playboy bunnies the second time later. That was been cut out, which was good because it was a really pointless scene and didn't seem to have any real ending. They still had the bit where Willard pinches I hate. Again, for me, the theatrical cut, you get the shot of Kilgore where he goes, "Someday this war is going to end," and then it cuts to the boat and Willard's voiceover going, "Someday this war is going to end."
The only reason it's there, in my opinion, is to demonstrate a softening of the boat crew's attitude towards Willard. That's why it's there, to put an element of bonding in. But you're right, it's it's
out of character for Willard, and the other thing is that the tension later on doesn't quite work because the mellowed out, and then suddenly they're at his throat again, which doesn't really make sense because he doesn't do anything to warrant that happening other than them going further up the river.
But what really struck me was the Ride of the Valkyrie sequence when you realise that's all for real.
Yeah,
there's no CGI in there. There's no faking it. Yeah, those are helicopter pilots flying their helicopters hell for leather at a village that they built and then blow up. It just looked spectacular.
Yeah, it amazes me that nobody hit each other. Like the helicopters didn't hit each other because they are so close, and one landing while another one's going over the top of it at the same time, and it's just the choreography to do that, the balls to do that.
Air traffic no-nos.
Yeah, absolutely. It wouldn't get made now because of the health and safety implications and everything else that you would have to abide by.
Real you wouldn't be able to do what they were doing in that film.
No, absolutely not.
So that's incredible, absolutely incredible. Obviously, structurally, it does mean that the film somewhat peaks a third of the way in. Although the Dolan Bridge sequence looks amazing too. That should look unbelievably good in HDR. Yeah. Because it's so psychedelic and the bright lights flashing up and it's going from black into white and that should look amazing. It's still a really funny film. The narration is brilliant, and the majority of the performances are superb as well. Brando's an acquired taste at the end, I think. I would have preferred to have seen maybe Jack Nicholson at the end of that river. I think he'd have done a better job of playing a Green Beret. But you had to have someone of stature, didn't you? At the end of that river had to be somebody. Whoever the biggest actor in 1976 had to be at the end of that river. You couldn't
if he did it now, it would probably have to be Tom Cruise. That's the irony. Although he'd be great.
Cruise?
No. I know you might have to.
Cruise would play it like Cruise would play it better, I think, because he'd be that lean, right, Marie.
You might have to Les Grossman him up a bit.
The audio, I mean, obviously, I think I'm right in saying that when it was released in '79, it was the first film to have stereo surrounds. So it's always had a very dynamic soundtrack, and like you say, Phil, this new mix was great. So I mean, I can't wait. In 2 weeks, and it's the 4K HDR Blu-ray with an Atmos soundtrack. So bring it on.
2 weeks? I think it's been delayed, mate. It's September now.
16th of September.
16th of September. There you go.
There you go. Sorry, Steve.
So a little bit longer to wait, but it looks like it's a fantastic set. I've got my pre-order in anyway, so yeah, it's good. Right, you went to see something else, Steve, at the pictures.
I did. I saw Blinded by the Light.
It's not HDR film then.
No. Yeah, it's directed by the woman who directed Bend It Like Beckham. And it's based on a true story of an Indian kid in 1987 in Luton. Pakistani kid who's he's got to deal with his family and his father's expectations of what he wants. But he wants to be a writer, and he meets a friend at college. He's studying English at college, and his friend is a Sikh, and he introduces him to Bruce Springsteen, and Springsteen's lyrics and music really speak to him. And it's sort of a story of his birth as an artist and a writer, and getting out of Luton and dealing with his family and moving to going to university in Manchester, sort of set to the lyrics and music of Bruce Springsteen. And the beginning of his love affair with Springsteen's music. Obviously, the film's full of Springsteen music. If you're a fan of Springsteen, which I am, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was a really sweet, charming, moving film with a lovely message, and they use Springsteen's music in a really interesting and creative way. And it really captured how miserable as shit 1987 England was.
and usually I think he got right behind the film as well, Springsteen. He fully supported it. So.
He gave them, I mean, I imagine he must have been very generous in terms of allowing them to use the music, because I could imagine it would have cost an absolute fortune otherwise to license those music, because they've got all the big hits from Springsteen up to a certain point. Obviously, it's music by him up to 1987, 88, so just before Tunnel of Love. So there's a lot of it's from Born to Run, and there's a lot of it from Dance on the Edge of Town, which is, in my opinion, his best album anyway. And really that kind of subject matter really fits perfectly with the storyline. But yeah, it's a fantastic film. And at the very end, they have photographs of the real guy with Springsteen and his friend, Sikh friend, and they're still friends now. I loved it. It was a really 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 enjoyable, moving, quite moving in places, and like I say, if you like Springsteen's music, that's up front and center for large parts of the film, and that's really good. And hearing it in the cinema with big speakers is always quite good fun too. But yeah, I thought it's a fantastic film. Really enjoyed it, so I recommend it highly if you get a chance.
Excellent, good stuff. So that's what we've seen. We're going to come on to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood at the end of the podcast. We'll give you plenty of warning about that. Myself, Steve and Kaz are going to discuss that because we've all seen it this week. So moving on to films that are not only opening this week, but opening over the next few weeks while the podcast is away, Kaz.
Okay, next few weeks of films at the cinema. We have Angel Has Fallen. So after Olympus Has Fallen, which was a surprisingly good, very B movie, but a throwback movie to films that we just don't get anymore. The style of Die Hard and Under Siege, with Gerard Butler breaking a lot of bones. We had London Has Fallen, which has got its apologists, but I found very disappointing as a follow-up. And now we have Angel Has Fallen. A curious title. I think Angel's referring to Air Force One, although...
I thought Angel referred to Gerard Butler's character. Isn't he the one that's...
Well, I thought Angel's the official designation for Air Force One.
I don't think there's a huge amount official about this series of films.
Sure, yeah.
No, you mean they're not realistic?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in this film that's what they're talking about, but I thought they called it Angel, although why they'd have a separate...
No, it's Air Force One and Marine One. Those are the
Marine
two
Force
designation for the helicopter and the plane. I don't think they called it Angel. I thought, looking at the trailer, it gives the impression that Gerard Butler gets accused of trying to kill the president, so he's the one that's fallen, and maybe Angel is him. I don't know. Who cares? Is anyone interested in this?
Who cares?
Seriously? Butler needs to get a new agent. He really does.
You're saying that? I'm going to try my best to go and see it and give it a shot. As I said, I was disappointed with the last one, but I really liked Olympus Has Fallen. I've got a lot of time for that. So I'm surprised they're coming up with a third one. I think that the trailer looks very dodgy. Oh my God, there's drones coming. It looks very poor. But let's see what they come up with. It can't be worse for me than London Has Fallen.
That's a very, very bold statement.
It can't. It better not be.
I look forward to your feedback.
Then there's Crawl, which is Alexandra Arjo. He did Hot Tension, I think, back in the day, which I really loved. Subversive psychological horror and literal horror. And this one looks quite good. Alligators. Except that's doing it a disservice, because I suspect it'll be a lot better than that. I've heard it's a taut, lean thriller. I think that it was on the, I'm going to say Odeon secret screening. Does that sound right, Steve?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think some lucky people have actually seen it already. But that looks really good. Looking forward to that. And then a real highlight of the next few weeks is the Banana Splits movie,
Is that really an 18 certificate, or was that a mistake?
It's a horror, Steve. It's a comedy horror.
The
sci-fi.
Banana Splits movie is an 18.
Yeah, I don't know what they're appealing to here.
I mean, they were always kind of disturbing as characters. I remember as a kid I thought they were a bit weird, but I didn't have it down as horror.
Maybe it's for the people who grew up with them.
Let me double check.
I'm not sure kids are going to go and see it anyway.
And the real highlight, because I was being sarcastic, was It Chapter 2. I can't wait for this. I thought the first one was tremendous. I did love the old TV series, TV movie, double parter, whatever you want to call it. I did really enjoy it back in the day. It suffered from budgetary limitations and arguably acting limitations, but it was pretty scary in my teenage years. And it still holds up, most of it. But I've loved what they've done with this. It's got a very Stranger Things vibe, and I really loved the first part,
Including one of the Stranger Things cast.
Yeah, and I can't wait for the. I think they nailed the cast on the adults, so I can't wait to see what they do with this. And I like the fact that they've done a decent trailer, a kind of a Winter Soldier style trailer, where they show what is essentially most of one scene from the film. So rather than just giving you lots of flash images that give it away, which they do give a bit of, they show quite a creepy little scene with Jessica Chastain visiting a really very nice old lady in a house. Yeah, it's very, very, very effective. So that's what we got to look forward to, and it's a pretty good lot.
Yeah, so I've just dropped the full synopsis for the Banana Splits movie. It is a horror. It's a taping of the Banana Splits TV show, and the body count starts to rise quite quickly.
So an 18 certificate Banana Splits movie made by people and written by people and starring people, none of whom I've ever heard of. I think I'll give that a miss. It's got 4.8 on IMDb, so I'm guessing it's not.
straight to disc appeal, I think, really, or streaming service. Talking about discs, right, so over the next few weeks, what can we expect, Steve?
Right, on 4K, we've got Hellboy. That's the 2019 reboot.
You missed that. Even though it's in 4K and it'll be
Want to miss.
I've got
Withers
the
won't buy
4K
that.
disc. I watched it a couple of weeks ago. It's not good.
Okay,
You
well, there
actually
go.
bought,
Definitely miss it.
but after all the reviews, you bought it anyway.
Yeah, of course.
God,
It looks and sounds quite good, but it's
That's
one of those films where there's been...
You're just encouraging them. Stop it. Right. Okay. Sorry. I don't want to get this time for another thing. But no, that's just ridiculous, Steve. Okay. But thanks.
We
It's,
need to get rid of the unmissable, or do a missable version of the unmissable badge.
Yeah.
For God's sake, don't. No, it's one of those
Avoidable.
films that clearly had a shitload of producer interference going on. They were obviously trying to make one thing and end up turning it into something else, because in the documentary that accompanies it, they managed to get through an hour of the making of without ever once mentioning Neil Marshall's name. I mean, you barely see him in sort of behind the scenes footage, and I think he gets mentioned by one person right at the end of the documentary, and he's like, "I'm, could have sworn someone directed this film." So yeah, clearly it got taken off him. So I feel sorry for the guy, really, because I like him, and he's done some fun stuff.
It was just an absolute mess. I couldn't believe what I was seeing on screen. It was such a car wreck. I had to stay just to see how bad it got.
Yeah.
I can't believe that you got to the end of the movie, a movie that you didn't like, and sat through all of the extras to find out more about the movie you didn't like.
I wanted to see what happened behind the scenes, which obviously they kind of brush over because it's.
Yeah, I think the days of honest behind the scenes finished with the Phantom Menace behind the scenes stuff. That's the most honest I've ever seen anything. Yeah.
Oh, I quite like the Tom Clancy commentary on Sum of All Fears, though.
Oh, that's just magnificent.
That's got to be one of the all-time greatest, where he basically goes, "Yeah, that you did a terrible job. with my book. And I don't think anyone, least of all the director, was expecting that kind of honesty. And he's like, yeah, you got this wrong, got this. Yeah, you shouldn't have done that. This is technically inaccurate. I wrote the book on this, and
I literally wrote the book on it.
Yeah. It's a marvelous guide on who not to get to do a commentary if you want him to agree with you.
Okay, well, to bring it full circle then, if you want to watch an honest making of documentary, like I said earlier, Hearts of Darkness is brutally honest and often very, very funny. So yeah, Hellboy 4K disc, also I presume Blu-ray as well. Don't bother. The Guillermo del Toro's original Hellboy is coming out on Blu-ray in October with some new extras and things and 2 cuts of the film. So get that if you want a Hellboy fix. Also out on 4K disc, Stand By Me. Speaking of Stephen King, this is an absolutely brilliant film. I actually bizarrely watched it earlier in the week with a friend. It's a fantastic movie. Ostensibly about 4 boys going to see a dead body, but really about early teen friendship between men or boys. It's got a fantastic cast. Late River Phoenix is great in it, and it's funny and moving. And I highly recommend it. And apparently it's a cracking looking disc too of our new 4K restoration of the camera negative by Sony. So well done, Sony. And also out on 4K disc and Blu-ray, Avengers Endgame.
That's some sort of small art house film, isn't it?
So I should probably just point out the dates here because we've got a couple of weeks. So 19th of August is Hellboy, 26th of August is Stand By Me, and on the 2nd of September you can get Avengers Endgame, either 4K disc, Blu-ray, or indeed 3D Blu-ray. That's still your thing. And that also, I've seen that disc already, and it's good. It's probably it's not one of the best I've ever seen in terms of image quality. It's it was a 2K DI. The HDR is quite effective, the color space, but it's not the most colorful film anyway. A lot of the time, so but it's got a much better soundtrack than a lot of recent Disney releases have got. There's some bass in there for a change. It looks and sounds good.
Just static metadata HDR.
Yeah, it's HDR10. HDR10 Dolby Atmos. The extras are on a second, so it's a 3-disc set, 4K disc movie. Because it's 3 hours of running time. It's a 4K disc. There's a Blu-ray for the movie, and there's a separate Blu-ray for the extras. And disappointingly, the extras are fairly minimal. And I just think, given this was the end of 22 films and a whole cycle and everything else, they could have. And you've got a whole list to play with. Why not give us a lot more?
There's probly a big collector's edition coming with both films and that kind of thing.
I still think.
Yeah, never heard of double dips there.
They will almost definitely be double dipping it. The deleted scenes don't even include the deleted scene that was put at the end of the film when they reissued it to try and get past.
Really, that's cheap.
Yeah, exactly. But the commentary track is excellent. The writers and directors, answer all your questions. those who have been scratching their heads about certain aspects of the plot, hopefully you'll get the answers there. So it's a good set, but it could have been more. It could have been better, I think. So I felt, although I enjoyed it, I did feel it was a little bit disappointing.
Okay.
On Blu-ray, we've got Wonder Park out on the 19th. It's been a while. Dragged Across Concrete, almost also on the 19th. Clute, which Kaz mentioned at the show, on 19th. The Chant of Jimmy Blacksmith on the 19th. The Third Wife on the 19th. We got the Arrow release of Cruising, which I saw you reviewed. Kaz, picture's a bit weird. It's another one of those strange freaking restorations.
Yeah, he'd already fiddled with the color timing, I think, for the DVD release. He obviously loves blue, but I don't think he fixed it for this. But more interestingly, they've basically DNR'd the hell out of it, and it's almost, there are large swathes of it where there's no grain, and where there's some serious sharpening going on. And I put in the review, I'm very surprised. Well, I don't think I used such polite language, but I'm very surprised that the director would approve this as his 4K restoration of a film he likes. I think I suggested that maybe he needed his eyes calibrated.
I think he's gone colourblind, given some of his colour timing decisions. Didn't he give a pink tint to the original Blu-ray release of French Connection?
Yeah, he likes changing his colour minds, but I don't think I had as much of a problem with the colours here. It was just, actually, in some of the scenes, he's got massively overblown kind of pinkish reds, as if everyone's wearing neon lipstick. which
Well, maybe they were. It was it was about the gay community.
yeah, it's a very odd story as well. But
it's a strange film. It's a really weird film for Pacino to choose at the height of his.
I don't think he chose to star in this film. I think, well, firstly they wanted Gere, but I don't think he had the clout at the time. He went off and did American Gigolo, which, for my money, is a much better film. But Pacino was drafted in to do this, but Friedkin decided at the 11th hour in the editing suite that he'd change his mind over the portrayal of the murderer and of the crimes committed. And Pacino was actually a little bit upset about it. He said, I'd have played it completely differently if you told me this is how you're going to go with it. Mm. So I think...
we need to get going.
All right, sorry, 26th of August, we've got Do the Right Thing, and also on 26th, we've got Old Boy, the original Korean version, and Escape Plan 3, can't believe there's a third one of those, Under the Silver Lake, and then on the 2nd of September, Castle Rock, Season 1, which is a King-related project, TV series, kind of dealing with tangential plots around Stephen King characters and novels, which apparently is very good. True Detective Season 3 is on 2nd of September as well. That was brilliant. I really enjoyed that, so check it out if you haven't seen it already. Howard the Duck, perhaps give that a miss. Shock Corridor and The Naked Kiss, all on the 2nd of September as well.
Okay, so that's everything on disc that's coming up over the next few weeks. Streaming-wise, Kaz, and quickly, because we're up against it time-wise and we really need to get onto the review as well. So what's coming up streaming-wise?
We got the 5th and final season of The Affair, Jump Forward in Time. And we've got Carnival Row, which looks quite interesting. That's Cara Delevingne and Orlando Bloom on Amazon. Yeah, that does look interesting. Fairies in a period time. Well, let's see what it brings. Interesting fantasy, to say the least. And then the 3rd season of The Deuce.
Looking forward to that too.
Yes. Although I didn't finish the 2nd before they pulled it off now, so I'm hoping they bring that back quickly.
It'll be back on again, yeah.
That's it.
Okay, so that's everything that's coming up while we're away. A little bit of Star Wars news, Steve, to get through. One of the things is quite interesting. Galaxy's Edge not doing the numbers as expected, but then I was thinking about this after I read your email when you said that, and I had heard that it's having issues. I'd watched a couple of things on YouTube where they were saying that the tendencies haven't been great and so on. But I did watch the launch events on the Star Wars show, and I watched a couple of other bits and pieces because I was interested to see what it was like. And I've got to say, it looked so crowded, so busy, and like you had to fight to get to everything, that if I was going, it would put me off. And
that might be a reason. I think it appears, and this is not a rumor because Bob Iger addressed the problem on a recent conference call with investors, but attendances have not been what they were expecting. It's been a bit of a failure really at the moment so far, and I think that's a number of reasons. One, I think people probably initially thought it's going to be crowded. I don't want to go and do that. It's really expensive.
Yeah, that's another thing.
And that's also a problem. Disneyland's upped its prices across the board, so that I think has hit their attendances generally, not just Galaxy's Edge, but overall their attendances are down because of pricing. But also there isn't much. The rides and stuff aren't very good from what I've read. It doesn't sound particularly interesting, and it's got nothing to do with the original trilogy. Which brings us on to the interesting question, which is why are Lucasfilm? They seem to be pushing the new stuff over the old stuff much more. In terms of Galaxy Edge, it's new stuff related, and in terms of the films, there was a real effort, particularly in the case of the Last Jedi, to sort of kill the past, forget it all. This is the new thing. You think, why are they doing that? The rumor is that Lucas, when he sold Lucasfilm to Disney, kept a share of the merchandising profits or revenues from stuff he created, his original characters. So that's one of the reasons why Disney's not so keen to use them, because they have to give money to Lucas if they do. And it also suggests, because merchandising contracts are bizarre things. Often they'll have clauses like, if it's slightly different, then it's not necessarily the same thing. and there's usually like a 25% difference, and it can not, but there could be a different percentage. But that might explain bizarre choices, like why has C-3PO got a red arm in The Force Awakens? Well, if you put a red arm on, it's not exactly the same as George Lucas's C-3PO, therefore we haven't got to pay him any royalties. Why is there a rectangular? Obviously we all know that the rail dish got knocked off the Millennium Falcon when it's inside the Death Star in Return of the Jedi, but why replace it with a rectangular one rather than a round one? Because then it's not exactly the same. Millennium Falcon in Solo.
Yeah.
In Solo, make it look completely different for most of the film, because then again we haven't got to give anything to it's a different Millennium Falcon. So I could believe, and this is only a rumor, but I could believe that to be the case. Why is BB-8 the main robot? Why not R2-D2? No, we'll chuck him under a tarpaulin for most of the film because we don't want to pay George any money. So suddenly you start thinking, is that why it's so crap? That's why Star Wars is rubbish now, just because he's too mean to pay George a few bucks. Who knows? But all I can say is that
obviously we've got
there's
a
a lot
point
riding on Rise of the.
This is not our opinion or anything. This is just what you're reporting on rumours that are out there.
Yeah. It's not. I mean, I'm reporting rumours or news from investor conference calls,
Right.
and my opinion is that there's a lot riding on the Rise of Skywalker, which we should see a new trailer for very soon, because there's a Disney conference, D23, I think, in a couple of weeks, end of this month. So I'm expecting they'll drop the new trailer probably at the beginning of September. Also, they'll probably announce, because they're already on for pre-order on Amazon, but they're re-releasing all the Blu-rays of all the Star Wars films.
And supposedly all the 4Ks in.
Yeah, well, they're doing the Blu-ray release in the run-up to Rise, and then they'll do the 4K release in the run-up to Rise's 4K release.
Yeah.
So I think we can expect 4K releases of all the Star Wars movies. Obviously, 2 are already available, Solo and The Last Jedi, but everything else will be released early next year, probably.
And everything's been corroborated as well in terms of that screening of the original Star Wars.
They screened the original 70mm print of the original cut, yes, which is interesting because that means it's there, it's available. They've got it. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Interesting other news is this morning they announced that Ewan McGregor's going to reprise Obi-Wan in a Disney Plus TV
Well, he's in
series.
talks, isn't he? I don't think it's been confirmed yet, but he's in talks to play Obi-Wan in a Disney Plus series.
All but confirmed was that he was going to do it. But yes, I mean, whatever it is, it's looking hopeful. He certainly wants to play Obi-Wan, and if the films don't come to fruition, which is what there were talks about, 2 films, I think a TV series might serve it some justice.
I think in terms of fans and that kind of thing, certainly on social media and so on, he doesn't get a bad time, does he?
No.
I think people really quite like him as Obi-Wan, so that might actually be quite successful if we ever get Disney Plus over here.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it'll come to Netflix.
Right, okay, so if you don't want to listen to our Once Upon a Time in Hollywood spoiler-heavy review, it's next. So at this point, we'll say goodbye to you, and thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again on the 9th of September for the podcast coming back. From this point onwards, we are going to talk about spoilers. We're going to talk about the movie and assume that you have seen the film. So at this point, again, I'm going to give you a second warning. If you don't want to listen to that, now's the time to switch off. So, right, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think there's lots to talk about here, but we'll try and keep it succinct if we can, because we are a bit over time. But I think it's worth putting this as a spoiler review and worth talking about, because we're talking about Tarantino. We're talking about is he back to form? Is the movie any good? And there's lots of things surrounding the film, like the Tate murders and the Manson stuff, and that gets intertwined into this, and it goes off on tangents and places that you probably might not have been expecting. So I think there's lots to talk about here. And Kaz's review is on the homepage, although it's not spoiler heavy at all. It's actually spoiler free. But Kaz, I got the feeling you scored an 8. So first of all, why the 8 score and your general thoughts?
I think that it's the best film Tarantino's done since Kill Bill. I did enjoy his films in the interim, but I don't think he's ever come close to his heyday of Pulp Fiction. I really enjoyed his Kill Bill films, and then since then, whilst I enjoyed rediscovering Inglourious Bastards, I don't think that got me first time around. And I always enjoy going to see Tarantino at the cinema, but I don't necessarily have distinct memories of Django or Hateful Eight as being classic Tarantino. I mean, even Inglourious Bastards had some classic scenes like the Christoph Waltz scene in it that make me think, that's Tarantino. But the last couple of times, a couple of westerns he did, I'm not sure they hit me quite as hard. This, for me, is closer to classic Tarantino. And it has some fantastic dialogue, fantastic characters. His kind of offbeat style meanders around, very languid pacing, very sumptuous sets and superb direction. I don't think it's predictable at all, and I think he's one of the few filmmakers who can get these kinds of films made these days. The other one possibly being Scorsese, although
that's the sad thing, though, isn't it? Really, and I thought that when I came out, because I think the subject matter, he loves the subject matter. It's him coming home.
It's a love letter
basically.
to 1969.
It's absolutely, and we'll get into that in a bit more detail as we go on.
Well, you wonder why I didn't give it higher than an 8, presumably, but I still thought it was a very strong 8. I just didn't think it was I think it was heading towards classic Tarantino territory, but I still feel that he's a little bit indulgent for his own good, and that.
But see, that's what I love about it.
Yeah, but he's capable of some great scenes, but he's also capable of not getting to the point on purpose, and sometimes that's a bit abrasive as a viewer. Sometimes I went with it, and that's the essence to enjoying Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. If you just go with it and you expect there to be a completely uneventful driving scene that takes up 8 minutes of the movie, where it's literally just them in a car driving and not even saying anything, then you know what to expect from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Yep. But for me, the best was still little flash moments. Like Brad Pitt absolutely stole the show for me.
He steals the film, absolutely.
Yeah, I thought DiCaprio has the bigger part. He has the deeper part. He has a character that goes places, and he has a tough choice. It must be, a tough role. It must be difficult for an actor to learn how to fluff lines and to fluff them perfectly and then do them perfectly afterwards. Yeah. And I thought DiCaprio was ace. But conversely, Pitt, who has a slightly lesser role, he just owns it.
I don't think it's a lesser role. I think it's a more laid back. You're not really sure. See, whereas DiCaprio is over the top actor. It's all about me. It's all about ego and everything else. Cliff's the understated friend that comes along, but he's hard as nails, and he's got a hidden past that never gets resolved. Which gives him a bit of an edge as well. And I think just Brad Pitt, the way he plays him, the humour, the one-liners. There's a lot of controversy about the Bruce Lee scene. I don't see it because one thing that Tarantino's doing here that I don't think he's done in his previous movies is the flashbacks. It's almost like Family Guy-esque, the flashbacks, where he's on the roof and he can tell he's starting to think about this thing with Bruce Lee. Now, you're seeing it from his point of view. So there's a lot of controversy saying they're making Bruce Lee out to be a dickhead. Well, actually, that's from Cliff's point of view. It's his flashback. That's how he is remembering how that happened. So I don't have an issue with Bruce Lee being the way he is in that because that's how he saw him.
It's also got one of the funniest lines in the film.
It has, absolutely.
If I kill you in a fight, I go to jail. If you accidentally kill anyone in a fight, you go to jail. It's called manslaughter.
Yeah, I mean, but it's clearly from his point of view. So everybody getting upset about, Bruce Lee would never be like that. Well, Tarantino's not saying he was like that, but that's from Cliff's point of view. It's his flashback.
His character doesn't even exist.
Yeah, exactly.
I also think it's Tarantino formed the character of Cliff based on a lot of composite stunt people. Yeah. One of them being Gene LaBelle, and Gene LaBelle had similar encounters. He was challenged by a boxer to a fight, a boxer who didn't believe his martial arts would do anything, and he leveled the boxer. He was challenged by Steven Seagal, who believed that he was a god, and Gene LaBelle reportedly proved otherwise. And so I think that he composited these real life events into something that audiences would recognize. And that is Bruce Lee. I also think that I didn't find it that insulting to Bruce Lee.
No.
Bruce Lee's he might be a fantastic man off set. He was a philosopher, poet. He's a supreme at his martial arts, but he also had to be a film star. And he walks onto a set. He's bunched people who expected him to just permanently be breaking bricks.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can just punch this brick. 1-inch punch. I'll just do it. And he was a showman. He was expected to be like that. So I can fully believe him standing there with a nobody at the time, Cassius Clay, before he was even known as Muhammad Ali. He's this outspoken boxer who came out of nowhere. I mean, Bruce Lee, I can fully believe that it's okay for the Bruce Lee on-set film persona to go, yeah, I can take that.
I don't get the whole controversy thing around it. And like I say, I mean, it's from a certain point of view. You know, he's not saying this is what he was like. And the whole thing's fiction anyway, which you suddenly realise when we get into the third act. You know,
he's pulled this trick before, by the way. He's getting a new idea, because he did exactly the same thing.
But
what I liked about it was that there was the whole build-up to throw you, because it started with a voiceover, and at such and such a time Sharon Tate went here and she got a whatever and she met up with her friends, and it was almost like a crime lead up, like one of these reality show type things. But the thing about Tarantino, I might be wrong on this, but he has never done a gruesome, violent death to any innocent person in his films. They've always been nasty bad guys, or they've always been protagonists in the film. He's never killed innocents or done anything over the top. Because when you get to that final act, I mean, that's the most bloody, gruesome, violent stuff I've seen for a long, long time. Utterly hilarious with the way he plays it.
It was really funny.
And he does it that way, and he takes it away from reality and all the rest. You know, these people didn't get murdered in the end of his film. He's changed history, but what he's done is, for me, there's an underlying theme of redemption throughout this film. It's about giving people a second chance. It's about, like, DiCaprio's actor. You know, he's fading away and all the rest of it. It's about him getting a second chance at things and all the rest of it. It's giving the innocents a second chance at, you know, this could have happened. It was all about chance as well. It's about chance encounters, chance meetings, Cliff meeting the Manson family and going on the ranch. And again, that was really well done. And yeah, it's got a few themes running through it, which I think he does extremely well. For a Tarantino film, there are threads that go nowhere, but that's the same in real life. You have conversations and things that go nowhere in real life. So I don't have an issue with that. I quite like the way he does a lot of character study. He does some of the best dialogue ever. It's a shame that only Tarantino could get a movie made like this that doesn't have superheroes or action scenes and all the rest of it, which I found really refreshing. Again, sitting down at the cinema and actually watching a film about characters, watching something that was original, the way he twists things when it comes to, you know, true life and real life and subverting history, and the way that he takes the bad guys and makes them comedic. So it takes all their power away. Because the Manson family and Charles Manson, absolutely grotesque, violent, horrible, evil people. But he managed to do it in the third act, where he takes that away. He makes them into almost a farce, a comedy scene. I've never laughed as much as I have at pure violence as I have in that final scene. It's just so well done, so well put together.
Well, it's very cathartic as well when you realise what actually happened. And the horror of murdering.
That's the problem with the film, isn't it? To really enjoy this film, you have to know about the Sharon Tate murders.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you don't know anything about the Sharon Tate murders, which a lot of people, I suppose, won't, they won't realise that that the ending's not what happened in real life. But also, I think a lot of it's a film, to fully appreciate it, you have to, have a reasonable understanding of Hollywood, filmmaking, the late 60s, the Sharon Tate murders.
Yeah.
Manson,
end of an era,
and Tarantino. Yeah. If you get all that, you're going to love it.
Because I guess the Sharon Tate murders, aside from the horrific butchering of a pregnant woman, it was the final bubble burst on the end of that golden age of Hollywood.
Summer of Love.
So Hollywood and the 60s and everything happy was officially dead. And I think that if you don't know that, because I happened to see it with somebody who didn't know it, if you don't know that, the ending doesn't. You don't even know that the ending isn't real.
Yeah, there was 4 guys sitting next to me who would have been in their mid-20s, and at the end of the film, they were having a discussion, and none of them understood the ending of the film. Yeah. They were like, I don't get that. Who was what? They were confused.
Yeah, most people aren't even going to know who Sharon Tate is.
Well, no, and
most people wouldn't even know who Roman Polanski is anymore.
No.
So, so to be honest, you really have to be a cineast to fully appreciate the film, or at least a fan of, serial killers. So yeah, for me, it was brilliant, but it did kind of perfectly tailor my own interests.
But the way he plays with you as well in building that up, so they're driving up to DiCaprio's house up the valley, and the camera pulls and you get the road sign for the street name. So if you know what's going on, you already know that that's the street that the Polanskis are on. The bit where Manson comes into the yard to find out. Now, I think that wouldn't have happened because it was a mistaken identity, wasn't it?
No, it's true. Manson wrote at least one, maybe more, songs for the Beach Boys. So he did know the Beach Boys, and one of the Beach Boys originally lived there, which is why he comes to visit, because he thinks he's still there, and he's not, and he goes away. And then he sent his followers to kill whoever was in the house. He didn't know it was Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski that were living there. It could have been anyone. It was total, bad luck on their part.
That's what I mean. It was mistaken identity. He sent them to kill somebody that wasn't
certainly. Yeah. Manson did have a relationship with the Beach Boys, and that's why he went to the house, because they had been living there before. Yeah. But yeah, it was bonkers. But yeah, I love the production design. They really captured '69 beautifully in the film. I love some of the driving stuff when they're driving down the street. Think like, what are these?
Some of the cars, Steve. Some of those cars are absolute classic cars. I mean, that was the problem though. There wasn't any ordinary cars. So when you saw the scene, they were all classic. So it was all classic Mustangs, classic Chevrolets, some of the big Bel Airs and stuff like that, which were all pristine. You know what I mean? There wasn't any of the normal cars.
That makes sense, doesn't it? It's called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an idealized wish fulfillment. It's not real. It's a fairy story. Yeah. It is a fairy story. It's in the same way that Inglourious Basterds could have been called Once Upon a Time in Nazi-occupied Europe. And it would have been a better title, probably, given what happens at the end of that film. Because I like Kaz. Initially, I saw Inglourious Basterds. I didn't like it because Hitler didn't get machine gunned to death in a cinema in Paris in 1943. So it's just ridiculous. Obviously, once I get past that initial, that's bollocks.
Yeah,
I can enjoy the film for what it was, which is a wish fulfillment fantasy. And therefore, going to this film, having been prepped on that particular kind of ending, I went with it. Whereas I think if I hadn't seen Inglourious Basterds, I would have been pissed off at the end. But then again, you don't want to end a film with a horrible, brutal murder of a woman who's 8 months pregnant.
That's the thing, and that's what I was coming back to. He's never done that before, so it wasn't going to end that way, was it? Really, if you think about it, he was never going to show that with innocent people. It's always the bad guys, and the way he's done it is perfect with that. The only problem I had, the way he treats Inglourious Basterds and Hitler at the end and all the rest of it, I didn't have an issue with that because nobody was upset by it. Nobody was going to get upset by that. The fact that he left these real life people alive who still have family who are alive and so on, I wondered, leaving the cinema, what they would think of that film, the way he ends it. That the 4 people survive at the end of it.
Well, I know he spoke to Sharon Tate's sister. She told her what he was planning, and she seemed happy with it. Right. Because I suppose in a way, isn't it? It's wish fulfillment. It's like, what a wonderful world it would be if they hadn't been murdered. Yeah. So. Yes,
and if they got their comeuppance. Yeah. It's everything that you. It's not only that they butchered those people. It's that would have been the ending of it. I actually thought that Tarantino was going to have that be what happened to Sharon Tate in the movie, and then have Brad Pitt come along and kill them all. Have it be a revenge ending. I didn't think he'd just have a completely different ending. I thought he'd have his wish fulfillment would be there's some vague kind of justice for the horror that happened. This works as well, but I certainly think that people would see it as some kind of revenge stroke cathartic. Yeah.
Whatever. That's where I thought he was going because of the whole crime lead up to it and so on. I didn't think he would show what happened, but obviously you were following Pitt and DiCaprio for a reason. So he fooled me with it. Although he's done it before, he did fool me with it as well. And the other thing is, if you show a flamethrower at the beginning of the movie, it has to come back at the end, doesn't it?
Oh, that is so funny. That was so funny. DiCaprio is very, very funny in this film. The bit when they turn up into the drive and the murderers turn up in the drive in their noisy car and he comes out drunk with a margarita in one hand, yelling and screaming at the goddamn hippies was hysterical.
Some of the, and I suppose it was right at the time, hippies, everyone know this, but some of the dialogue at the start about hippies and that kind of thing, it was so funny. Really, really funny. And that's the thing with Tarantino stuff as well. The conversations, they're not just on-spec conversations. There's a lot of meaning in there, and there's a lot of things and it repeat viewing as well. And some of the quotable lines, it's going to be a really quotable movie. People are going to be quoting this for a long time. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Myself, I would probably give it a 9, just for the reason that I think he's really back on form, and he's never going to do another Reservoir Dogs or a Pulp Fiction. That was his peak. But anything that he does do going forward, even a bad Tarantino film is better than summers full of blockbuster movies. It's nice to have something a bit different. Do you not think, Kaz?
I absolutely love Marvel. I'm slightly concerned about Disney taking over the world, and watching this movie made me think that it's possibly only the second movie this year that I've really gone, I am really looking forward to that. I can't wait to see that. And it's refreshing that it has nothing to do with superheroes. It's not a big blockbuster thing. It's, it's not any. So I hope more filmmakers get this kind of opportunity. I hope it's not less.
And another thing, it's nice to have an 18 certificate to go and see.
Oh yeah,
well, you can go and
very
see
much.
movie. That's 18.
He's the only one. He's the only one apart from Scorsese who can pull that off.
Yeah.
Even superhero movies, it's only things like Daredevil. It's not Daredevil. Well, sorry, Deadpool that have managed to just about get away with that. But apart from Scorsese, he's the only one who's got that in the bag.
Yeah, Steve.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I'd give it 8 or 9. I think it 9 for me, but mainly because A, I like Tarantino, B, I like movies, and C, I'm into serial killers. So for me, it was a win-win-win.
No, I've got to say, I did do a whole recap last week where I sat and watched a couple of documentaries just to recap on what actually happened, and it was so worthwhile doing because it was almost like cramming for an exam. Because he saw certain things coming up, and he hit certain things that were true, and so on. Yeah, you definitely need that going into the film to get the most out of it. I think you need to have a bit of the background to it, absolutely. And I love Hollywood as well. I love the whole behind the scenes Hollywood thing, and I thought the thing with DiCaprio as well. Just to quickly wrap up, the way he portrayed that actor who was down on hard times, but also portrayed a director who said to him, I want you for your acting, because he was complaining about having to wear a moustache and everything else. Yeah. And that to me was kind of a mirror to Tarantino, wasn't it, really? How he's taken some people who were down and out, like Travolta and so on, and brought them into the fold again and made them popular again because he knew they were good actors. So I like that aspect as well.
It's got a great cast. I think pretty much everyone's in it.
Yeah.
As I could work out.
Yeah, lots of
Often
cameos.
Lincoln, you'll miss them.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's like you said, it's really refreshing to go to the cinema and see an original film made by an original talent that's not a superhero or a sequel or a adaptation of a game or whatever. Although I've got to say, before it was a trailer for Joker, and that looked really interesting.
It did. It looked like an interesting take. That
looked
on
like
it,
it might be really genuinely interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I enjoyed it. Obviously, I think your appreciation of the film will vary depending on your background knowledge to a degree. But I think anyone can still enjoy it, particularly if you're a fan of Tarantino.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Kaz, final question for you then. We keep saying that Tom Cruise is the last big Hollywood actor. Is Tarantino the last big Hollywood director?
Oh, interesting. I think he's a strong contender for it. I would actually say Scorsese's still in there with a chance. I do think that Scorsese has been won over a little bit by studios, but I'm very, very as interested in this, I am interested in The Irishman. That's an absolute all-star cast.
Yeah.
And if they can pull off that, we're talking De Niro, Pacino, Harvey Keitel, bring back Joe Pesci. I mean, it's an absolute all-star cast and a gangster movie from Scorsese. I mean, if he can pull off another Casino, I'd definitely be back on the Scorsese bandwagon in a big way. But I think that they are a dying breed. And there's no room for them in the future, because every single decent indie director who pulls off a miracle of a dashing debut gets sucked up to do a Marvel film, and then either is successful, but it's relatively generic. And I love Marvel films, but they're not really stamped by the individual director's mark, or they get fired from it and replaced, and then kind of disappear off into doing something else. So I've got my concerns about how we're going to have the next Tarantino or the next Scorsese.
I don't think you will. I really don't think you will.
Well, interesting that you say that, because obviously Disney's recently bought Fox and has pretty much shut down everything Fox was doing. So, it's going to get worse and worse, isn't it? It's going to be. What's Disney doing? They're making Marvel movies, Star Wars movies, Pixar movies, and remaking their cartoons. That's your lot.
Yeah.
And the more that becomes the norm, and the more money that lot makes, the less likely you are to get anything original or risky. Would you have got a film about a woman shagging a fish that won Best Film 2 years ago from Disney? No. You got it from Fox. So unfortunately, I think cinemas, we're going to have to look to TV if we want something original and challenging. I mean, Euphoria, that wouldn't get made as a film, would it?
No. Half of the things we mentioned on the lineup, yeah. I think it is a changing landscape, but it might come full circle. I mean, there's an irony making a film once upon a time in Hollywood about the golden age of Hollywood and the change to the new age, the European influence, at a time when it's changing to superheroes and Disney and the death of possibly anything original. It might come full circle again. Just have to live to see it.
But if you like serial killers, we're recording this on a Friday, and today is when Netflix drops Mindhunter season 2, which also involves Charles Manson. So check it out.
It's played by the same actor.
Played by the same actor, yeah.
Okay, well, on that bombshell, that's it for this week. Jesus, we're running into Tarantino run times here for the podcast.
Yeah, but we aren't going to be back for another 3 weeks. So
but yeah,
make the most of it.
You got three weeks to wait for us coming back on the 9th of September. But my thanks to Ed Selley.
Relax. Have a cigarette.
Steve Withers.
I got Madonna's big dick in this ear.
And Kaz Harlow.
You going to bark all day, little doggy, or are you going to bite?
Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Bookmark AVForums for latest reviews, news and videos. Plus, why not leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes, but only if you enjoyed the show. Also, head over and check out our YouTube channel for videos on the latest product launches and reviews, and feel free to subscribe while you're there. I'm Phil Hinton. Thank you very much for listening. And like we say, we'll see you again on the 9th of September.